I'd like to call this meeting to order. Will the clerk please read the statement?
This is a meeting of the Township Council for Monday, February 25th, 2019. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public and the press on January 3rd, 2019 and February 14th, 2019 with the time change. I'm posted in the bulletin board in the municipal building in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act and JSA 10:4-7.
Roll call.
Councilmember Coombs?
Here.
Councilmember Kadish is not present. Councilmember Van Tassel?
Here.
Councilmember Allberger?
Here.
Council President Murphy?
Here. Please rise to salute the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to start our meeting this evening with budget presentations. So if Lynn Schweiger would please step forward. Tax assessor. Hello. How are you? Good. How are you? Good. I think, I'm not sure about the rest of the council, but primarily, I think it would be good for the public to be aware about what's going on with the reval this year. Just maybe with the reval, and just information on the lot and block changes, and also why we needed new maps, because that's what people are asking me. Why have we wasted money on new maps? So, other than, like I said, I'm not sure if anybody else has any questions, but a lot of the rest of your budget is pretty standard.
Right. So do you want me to start with that
Sure.
then? Okay. With the new maps, if they came to my office and saw them, they would realize why we needed to spend it. But the main reason is the state is changing all the rules. They want us to go digital, and they don't want decimals anymore in the blocks and lots. So they demanded that we change all of the blocks and lots, and that happened twice. The first time we did it, they didn't like it, so they made us renumber it once again. So it wasn't something we wanted to do. I certainly did not want to learn all the new blocks and lots. I know them quite fine, thank you, but it was mandatory. The revaluation has just been finally approved. They finally approved the maps on February 18th. They approved it, which means we'll start going forward with the revaluation, which will be effective as of 2020. The reval company has graciously decided not to raise our rates at all for the reval, so it would be the same thing as it was proposed, which is $809,000. The only additional fees will be if they have to go to tax court or if there's additional line items, which there are. So that'll be minimal. And the revaluation had to happen because of the disparity of neighborhoods. Because of all the appeals that happen, the neighborhoods are not equal anymore, and that's the main thing for revaluation. It isn't the ratio, it isn't how much money you're spending or anything like that. It has to do with the coefficient of equalization, and that is nowhere near where it should be.
Okay. And during the reval, there'll be meetings set up with communities?
Definitely. Letters will go through as soon as they get the letter from the state, which should be forthcoming this week. Then they'll start sending out the letters that they're going to be inspecting. They'll have public meetings. They'll come to a public meeting for you if you would like, so that they could speak to the public at one of our council meetings. I have always in the past set up individual meetings for different areas of the township so that people could make the meeting so that they could hear what's going on. They should be, it'll be on the website when they're going to be in certain areas in the beginning.
It would be like, and I just see somebody from Barry Lake, so Barry Lake's Clubhouse?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
So I'm hoping to do that before I leave so that, I'll be able to go and possibly whoever's going to succeed me will be able to come with me as well so they get familiar
Leave
with
as
the
in
area.
your retirement?
Yes.
Oh. Just
So, anyway, I still can't get my head around that. I'm terrified, but anyway. Is there anything else you want to know about the reval?
Does anybody?
And what month is it going to start?
It should start next month, because it should start sometime in March. We don't have the letter yet, so they're not permitted to start until they get the letter from the state.
Thank you.
When do you anticipate them actually accessing homes?
I don't anticipate that immediately, probably nearer to summer. At first, they're going to have to make a zoning map, get that prepared, a neighborhood map, get that prepared. They have to figure out the basics of what the town is like and get some property record cards to look at areas to see how that looks. And then they'll start doing some numbers, and then they'll start. Especially in a community such as this, they found out last time it's much better to wait till almost summer when the permanent residents are here for all the lake communities.
Okay. And I know it was something that was discussed a couple of years ago when this whole process started, is that the company that comes, they'll all have identification, everything, everyone will know exactly who they are.
Definitely, and I'll do the same thing as last time. I'll post it online so that anybody could look if they can't get in touch with us, or they'll be able to see it. The police officers will have all the information down there, including the type of car they drive, their insurance, their driver's license, and everything will be on file.
Okay. All right, thanks. Anything else, Sandy?
No, thank you.
No.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You have no questions about the budget? We're good with that? Okay.
I think, because most of it is pretty standard. It was just that, like I said, the reval, which is something that, since it's finally, everybody's been hearing about it for a few years, and now that it is finally hitting, I just thought it would be a good idea if you just, came and spoke about that briefly.
Right, and the revaluation budget isn't in my budget, but I suggest everybody takes a good look at that, because there are a lot of expenses that come up with a revaluation that we don't think about. More appeals, and more things for the office. There's going to be so much additional work, it's unbelievable. Plus, it's going to be like last time, it's going to fall the same time as the census, so that's like triple work, because the assessor's office is very involved in the census.
So if they start accessing the homes in the summer, how long do you anticipate it would take for them to get through the entire town?
It'll take till at least November.
Okay, so the appeals and everything will be in 2020?
Yes, and they have an additional month to appeal till May 1st, so it's usually an extended period of time. They're probably going to have informal hearings in January, possibly to February. Like last time, we had informal appeals for at least a month, maybe. I think it was closer to 6 weeks. They were here on Saturdays and weeknights to come see, so the public could see them in case they had any problems with their assessment, so they wouldn't have to go to appeal. So you have 2 times to look at your property record card. You have the informal hearings, and then you have the appeal. So everyone should get their due process.
Lynn, is there a different timeline for the appeals than there had been previously?
The only thing is that it probably will go a little later than we thought. The process is exactly the same. You get an extra month to appeal.
Okay.
Instead of April 1st, it's May 1st next year.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much for
Thank you very
listening.
much.
Have a great night. Thanks.
Oh, I didn't read this. This is, can we give her a minute? Ask her to stay for a moment?
Lynn?
I don't know.
Lynn?
You guys, Lynn? I just want to look at this paper here.
Sure.
In case there's any questions.
May I sit while you?
Oh, yeah.
What is, it says here, prior to 2008, the most appeals experienced were 16. Are you saying only 16 people?
Per year.
Okay.
At the most. In fact, one year I had 2.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
When was the last reval done?
2009 effective. They took all the statistics in 2008, and it was effective 2009, so 10 years ago. We were ordered for this revaluation in 2013. That's how long it took to get the maps done. That's what bad shape they were in.
Okay.
And the problem with the reval last time is we were just coming off of that height of the market. So that's why a lot of the properties were assessed where they were, because of the sales.
And that's even going down. We went down 20, 27 to 33% less than what the value was, because we saw the incoming MLSs and things, and we said we'll be in trouble if we go at the value. And we didn't go 3 years back either, because 3 years back would have been the height of the market. So it's very difficult to figure out where we would land last time. And this might be the same thing, because we're going up now a little bit, but not a lot, but we still have a lot of foreclosures out there.
Hopefully, we look at doing a maintenance every year or so.
Yeah, that'll be a decision that the county board will have to make along with the council. Do we want to go to yearly reassessment or the way that we're doing it now?
Yeah.
Because then you would pay 5 years for your revaluation in addition to every year paying for a reassessment.
I guess the difference is what is the cost of tax appeals
Right.
versus just doing the maintenance.
And then there's the difference, if the market starts to go up, if you raise a neighborhood, you're going to hear it too, so.
I tried to get the price they gave me, but I couldn't get it, just saying.
Well, don't forget, it's a mass appraisal.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out, what does a neighborhood sell for? What was the average that it was sold for? How much time was it on the market? So it's not an individual assessment, and the land is done by extraction. So you're finding out how much each house is worth in every neighborhood, and then, well, what is the land worth? It's whatever's left over, for the sales. So that's the difficult part too, is trying to figure out the land. That makes a big difference, plus or minus, in your assessed value.
Any other questions, Sandy?
I'm almost done. If you could wait one more moment, thank
No
you.
problem. I'm only going to Mr. Spiotti's after this. Represent Vernon.
We spent $51,193 last year in tax appeals on legal.
On legal fees?
51,000.
Probably just wasn't in the house.
Well, New Jersey changed it that he has to attend more things than I do.
Okay. I have no other questions.
No more questions? All right, thank you very much.
No questions?
thank you,
Okay,
and thanks for waiting.
Have
Thank
a
you.
great night.
Thanks.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
Good evening.
16.
Next we have
Chief,
Chief
Yeah, but go.
Chief Young,
Everyone? With the- up there.
Captain Kimkowski. That's all-
Oh,
that's
here it is. I mean, I had it.
Captain Kim.
Good evening. You want me to jump right into it, or
Jump right in.
you ready?
Or you're going to talk about the decreases? No. The police is on tab 16.
It's like to be now.
It would be in tab 16, but I just gave the updated,
Excuse me?
ones.
Yes, you have the update.
So this is what we should be looking at, the one you gave us.
Okay, I'm gonna jump right into it. I'll just go line by line. When I get done with the section or with the line, if you have any questions, just feel free to just let me know, okay?
Thanks.
So I'll start with the top, account line number 10574501. That's Police Department regular salaries. The proposed budget this year for 19 is $3,398,644. This is obviously as of December 31st, so there was some retirements, promotions, leave expectations. There's a couple things in there that did occur. We also have a total of 15 officers that moved up in step increases. 4502 was overtime. We were able to maintain that at the same level as last year at $175,000. That is, year to year, we've got to make sure we have enough in there to cover events like storms like tonight. Like, you could have a couple of weeks where nothing happens, and you could have events like this where it's kind of all hands on deck and there's a lot of stuff going on. But we've been able to maintain under that amount, so we kept that at that amount. Longevity saw a very slight decrease to $113,580. That was contractual. The administrative staff, slight increase to $180,366. That was also contractual. College credits, that stayed the same at $18,000. That's also contractual. Detective allowance stayed the same at 1,000, that's contractual. Special officers stayed the same at 3,000. We were able to actually, we didn't use as much last year, but those are specials. We use them for 4th of July fireworks, elections, certain township events, like when they close Main Street for the township fair. We use them for stuff like that instead of using a regular police officer. Supervisor coverage 4514. You see a slight increase there. That's specifically due to the way the steps work now. What we found is with the change of the contract several years ago when we expanded to a lot more steps. Now what happens when you have a supervisor who takes off, a sergeant in charge of the road, he takes off, the person right below him could be several steps below him because there's so many more steps in our contract now. So when that officer makes the supervisor coverage to cover, it's a bigger amount. So we needed to accommodate that the last couple of years. We've seen that increasing, and that's because we have more guys within those steps. So although that's costing a little more there, I mean, overall, you're saving significantly because you have more steps in place. Any specific questions with that top section?
How many steps you have?
We're at 9 steps now. We were originally at 5, but that's one of the things that I should point out. When we were originally at 5 steps, that was about 3 contracts ago. So everybody would get the top pay much faster.
Right.
Now with 9 steps, you're going to continue to see these increases year after year, but they're not getting there nearly as fast. So we're in much better shape now than you would be if we've been under a contract 3 contracts ago. That makes sense, everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. 4521, that's office supplies. We're requesting the same amount this year at 4,500. 4522, equipment rental and maintenance. There's a slight increase there. The reason that there's a slight increase there is because what happened with our body cameras, we're now in a point that we needed to either get a maintenance contract. The maintenance contract is about $4,000 a year. I just don't think that makes sense because it costs about $850 to replace a camera. We have 15 cameras, so if I spend $4,000 a year on a maintenance contract, I mean, honestly, I think I'm better off just buying a couple of cameras if it comes to it. I don't think we're going to have that many cameras breaking. So the thought is we added a little bit extra in equipment rental maintenance to accommodate us if any of those break. That would buy us about 2 cameras. We really don't have too many cameras breaking, so I think you're wasting money if we do a $4,000 maintenance contract for that. We do the firmware contract, which is the updates on the software itself, but that's farther down below in service contracts. So that's why that bump was in there. Education conferences and seminars, that stayed the same at 15,000. That's contractual. Materials and supplies stayed the same. That's at 8,500. Uniform allowance, that's at 2,900. That's also contractual. Uniform replacement, $8,000. That covers when we hire somebody new, like we just did. We hired those 2 guys. That's where the uniform allowances come from. In addition to, if uniforms get ripped or some sort of damage occurs or promotions, that's where that money comes from. Tuition reimbursement, 15,000. So that's actually contractual. That's one of those line items that we have to budget for because people could potentially put in for up to $15,000 in college. But if nobody puts in for it, that's not money that we keep and we put elsewhere. That goes back to the main budget. So,
Can any officer, is there a certain amount like that somebody can?
the maximum amount per
Maximum.
contract is $15,000 for the department as a whole.
Right.
So if only one guy goes for college, he could effectively probably use up to that amount total by himself. If more than one guy puts in for it,
They
they
have
would
to
be
share.
splitting it, or 3 guys, they would be splitting it accordingly. But we're under the program now that if somebody's going to be going to college, we encumber that money up front early in the year. So we could say, okay, we're making sure at the end of the year, somebody doesn't put money in, but because somebody did it earlier in the year, they get money. Somebody at the end doesn't. We're going to encumber everybody up front and say, you got to tell us up front if you're going to college. This way we can be even for everybody.
Are they credits that are job-related?
Yeah,
Or-
actually, per the contract, there's certain things that they have to stay within the confines. to
I'm
go for.
asking this way if the public may
Sure.
have a question. This way
Of
it's
course.
answered.
Yeah, business management degree, criminal justice degree, things like that. It has to conform to somehow align with our position or our jobs, so.
I have a question.
Sure.
Just stepping back to the uniform replacement and uniform allowance. So for the two new hires, wouldn't that be under uniform allowance as opposed to a replacement?
No, that would actually be the comment. My secretary actually puts things in that wrong line item, and I got to fix it all the time. It should be worded better. That uniform allowance actually is specifically for the records clerk, and that was actually, and also under the old chief's contract, he also got a uniform allowance. That's what that covered.
So when I look here at this line item, last year you had 8,000 there, and you only used 1,283. So why is this year 8,000 again?
Well-
If you're really not using it that much.
It depends on how many officers you hire to outfit them and equip them properly.
How much does it cost to outfit a new hire?
Well, it also depends on the amount of money that you have to spend for the academy. So all those expenses come from that line item. So the academy itself is usually around $1,500 per officer. And then you have all the academy expenses. I'm doing it off the top of my head. So academy expenses are probably somewhere in around $1,000 for uniforms and ammunition. That's in addition to the academy itself. And then you also have to outfit them when they actually come on duty. They have their Class A uniform, Class B uniforms, raincoats, winter coats, hats, things like that.
I'm just curious, how much would that be for one
If you want, I can look back and I can get you copies of the purchase orders for those.
Well, I
and then
don't
we can
need an
get you
exact, I'm just curious of how much it costs.
So I would say probably somewhere in the ballpark of up to $4,000 per officer, if I had to guess, somewhere pretty close to that. We were fortunate, like I said, we just took the other two guys, we actually hired them. They were currently in the academy for the sheriff's department. So there's some expenses that they actually shouldered already that was beneficial to us. So.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious. Thank you.
So for example, we didn't spend as much last year. It just worked out the way that the cycles worked with new hires, that we didn't have to spend as much out of that, but we were projecting if you hired the guys, maybe, for example, Officer Gonzalez that got hired in December, he came from Vernon Township, so we didn't incur any academy expenses whatsoever for him. So we saved quite a bit of money hiring him without having to incur those academy expenses. We just had to pay for uniforms and stuff, so.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Doctors and exams, that did go up slightly. The reason for doctors and exams going up slightly was because there's mandatory Attorney General guideline random drug testing now. We have to do that twice a year, and there's expenses incurred with that. It's right around, I want to say it's like $50, $50 to $60 per officer that you have to do, and you have to do a certain percentage sampling. So there's a new expense that we have to incur now with that, and that happens twice a year.
Twice a year, you said?
Twice a year. Spring, we're going to do it in the spring and fall. It's, like I said, it's random drugs testing, but that's mandated by the Attorney General. Ammunition is the same amount as last year at $9,000. Technology is the same as last year, $9,000. Detective expenses, the same as last year, that's $500. That's their drug buy money. Membership and publications, same as last year, $2,750. Service contracts, there is a slight increase. That was for two reasons. That's specifically because of the firmware warranty for the body cameras that I was explaining. We do need to be able to maintain the updated software, obviously, so the body camera functions correctly. But we also are incurring some additional expenses because we did upgrade to that new digital radio system. And with that, there's now DSL charges. We're not under the old antiquated phone line charges that we used to have forever, that we had so many problems with. Now we're on DSL, which is so much nicer for our radio system. But that's something that's just incorporated with the actual digital radio upgrade. And the Junior Police Academy, we're asking for the same as last year. We've been able to keep that low, but the goal is I really want to get as many kids as possible in this year. So it'd be nice if I could actually spend right up to that whole 1,000 and have 50 kids in there. That would be awesome. So any questions on the O&E section? Okay. Moving on to radio communications for regular salaries and wages. That's line item 4601. You're going to see a slight decrease there to $351,216. That's because Robin Odessa retired in October, so she's not here this year. Overtime, there was a slight increase and that's 4602. One, that's mostly because of contractual increases with dispatchers, but also we found that we just did not have enough money when it comes to the overtime for the dispatch center. We were missing that mark the last couple of years. So we asked for a little bit more money in that line item. Longevity, that's also contractual. We only have one officer left that collects longevity. He's scheduled to retire potentially next year. TAC training officer, that's contractual. And the holiday pay is also contractual. Any questions on that section? Okay. Radio communications office supplies, that's the same as last year at $2,000. Materials and supplies, that's the same last year at $22,500. And also uniform allowance is the same as last year at $4,200. You'll see that those numbers last year were not fully expended, but we did hit a point where usually at the end of the year is when we replace all of our materials and supplies and office supplies. We did hit a budget freeze due to some of the issues that were going on. So some of the things we normally would have bought at the end of last year, as we were hitting the end, we weren't able to buy them. So we're incurring some of those costs now as things are opening up to try to, resupply the stuff that we need. And line 0101, regular salaries, that's $70,000. That's the shared service for Sussex and Wantage. That pretty much pays for one full-time dispatcher. That's $70,000, which is actually, I believe, if I remember right, that's scheduled for renewal of that agreement this year. I think this is the 5th year for that. I believe so. So overall, you'll see a decrease of around $6,284 for the dispatch center budget. Moving on to,
Before you actually move on, maybe just with dispatch, because it was something that the council will be discussing, are part-time positions, which we are aware of your part-time positions.
Sure.
In the 911 center, so if you could just cover that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So a few years ago, what happened was, I should have brought my proposal, my explanation with me.
That's okay.
So a few years ago, what happened is we had a full-time dispatcher that was retiring, and we were in a position where, with 7 full-time dispatchers, that's 365 days a year, 3 shifts every day, between 7 people. So in addition to the regular full-time shifts, there was, if you get somebody takes a personal day, or vacation day, or a holiday, or even a sick day, you're pretty much covering that with overtime. That's just the way that the system worked. So several years ago, I was in charge of the dispatch center, and one of those dispatchers, the full-timers, were retiring. And I brought to them, I said, if this was something you would consider, if we took this one full-time spot and made it 2 part-timers, you would have the availability to have an extra body here that could absorb some of these shifts so people weren't getting stuck nearly as much on mandated overtime. So they did renegotiate with the town. That was probably 7, 8 years ago. I'm going to 6, 7 years ago now. And they did create that position. So that one full-time spot was converted to 2 part-time positions. Mm-hmm. So what happens is the first week, somebody works 3 shifts, 24 hours. The second part-timer works 2 shifts, 16 hours. Then they flip-flop to cover those 40 hours the next week. So one week is 24/16, the next week, the other one gets 16/24. And that covers that one full-time position. And then what we would do is we would take that part-timer, and we would have a couple of extra shifts that we could fill them in here and there, and we could pay them at between $15 to $20 an hour, depending on where they're at in the salary range, at a significant cost as compared to paying a full-time dispatcher regular overtime. Depending on where their steps could be, that could be anywhere near $50 an hour for an overtime expense that we could cover for, $15 to $20 an hour. One of the problems that we hit as we were moving through that is the Affordable Care Act came into play. And then what happened was anybody that averaged over 30 hours a week, you have to offer them health insurance. So that became something that we started managing then was, okay, now we got to manage them and maintain them under 30 hours a week. So now they're not hitting, getting to a position where they can get medical insurance. So then we started exploring it and we said, you know what, we could actually hire another part-time dispatcher simply to cover vacation, holiday, personal, sick call-outs. Once we get them fully trained, it really costs us nothing, and we're able to, fill these positions for a substantially less amount of money, between $15 to $20 an hour, depending on where they fit in that range. So that's what we did. So right now we have 3 part-timers. 2 of them cover that original 40-hour work week that that full-timer had. And our other one is just purely,
Like a floater.
he's a floater, on call as we need him. He has another full-time job. He's a dispatcher down in Morris County. So if a vacation request comes up, I don't have to fill it with, a full-time employee. I can fill it with a part-time employee, which gives us so much flexibility. And we're able to maintain under that 30-hour mark for the Affordable Care Act. And we've been functioning pretty efficiently. As you could see, like I said, from our overtime, we're down in the 20s compared to where we were years ago. That was well up into the 30s, was the overtime budgeted for the dispatch center.
And those are the only part-time positions you have? Like
Yeah.
in the police department?
Yes, that's it. Yeah, so it's really a necessity to us to be able to maintain 3 shifts a week for some of those dispatchers, or 4 shifts a week, or, as long as we stay below that 30-hour average, because without that, we would be paying a full-time dispatcher, full overtime rate to cover those shifts. So it is pretty critical that we're able to go above that 20-hour mark.
Okay. Any questions?
We kind of got it fine-tuned in, so it's working pretty good with the staffing we have right now, with the way it's set up. I think we're able to pretty much minimize the costs, so. Okay, I'll move on to the animal control budget next. That's line number 8801, animal control regular salaries. You will see a slight increase in there. That was assuming a slight increase for the employees. Obviously not contractual because they're not union employees. Their overtime, there was a slight decrease in overtime, and that was directly correlated to the on-call that we worked out with them. Each employee gets an on-call, and because of that, we were able to minimize the amount of overtime expenses that we're forecasting. 8821, office supplies. You'll see a pretty substantial increase there, but that's because we're asking this year to accommodate a carbonless paper purchase. I was explaining, actually during our budget meetings, that the animal control goes out and they're doing their dog license, they're still using carbon paper. Carbonless paper would obviously be very helpful and beneficial to them if they were able to have that.
People probably don't even know what carbon paper is.
I know, so they're using carbon sheets to fill out the basic forms that they need to do, so carbonless paper would be a big help for them. Materials and supplies, there's a slight increase there. That's because of the license tag price increase. Advertising, requesting the same amount. Uniform allowance, requesting the same amount. Uniform replacement is the same amount. Medical supplies and food, the same amount. Dog census rabies clinic, the same amount. Spay and neuter, requesting the same amount. And professional services, requesting the same amount. Any questions on that?
No.
I go into the last section, which is capital budget items.
Tab 28.
28.
The first item is the 2 police vehicles. That's our patrol vehicles. That's in our usual cycle. We do 2 patrol vehicles a year to replace the outgoing vehicles. Both of the vehicles that are being replaced are in excess of about 110,000 miles right now, and they are definitely in need of being replaced.
I have a question. When did you guys get the pickup truck?
Pickup truck, that was this past year.
That came out of our last year's capital budget?
Yes, we had 2 patrol vehicles last year. So what we found is the 2 patrol vehicles, as we're cycling them through, that became our supervisor vehicle. And we equipped that with the trailer hitch so they could tow the trailer with the quad, the gator. But that's designated specifically for our supervisors. That was out of last year's 2 patrol vehicles. We made one of them a pickup truck, and we actually saved money buying a pickup truck because it was substantially less than the Ford
But you
Interceptor
can't use it
SUV.
like a patrol vehicle, can you?
No, we can.
Oh, okay.
We can. That's designated as our supervisor vehicle. Supervisors typically aren't doing the transports. It's the regular patrol guys are doing the transports. So we were able to not equip it with a cage. We had some things that we cut and saved on, but it serves an excellent purpose for what we have it for. So
Okay, because when we talked about this, you never mentioned a pickup truck. It was, you were telling us how you needed to rotate, not you, but administration, rotate the 2 patrol cars through. I didn't know there was going to be a pickup truck bought.
That was one of those patrol vehicles that we rotated out. So the old supervisory vehicle got rotated into the regular patrol line, fleet line, and this became the new supervisory vehicle. So that was one of those 2 patrol vehicles. And it was,
Yeah, we didn't know that, though.
yeah, it was several thousand less. Well, once we started looking at everything, the problem that we have is we have to be able to tow that gator when we go up to the trails or go to rescue or whatever we have to do with, and the quad, and to tow with one of those regular Interceptor SUVs. I mean, it can do it, but, you know, if I'm towing up 515, I'm much better off with something that can actually pull it pretty well.
One of the officers, actually, somebody questioned him, and I guess there were items that you would have to put inside the patrol car and open the windows. So this actually gives it the flexibility of putting it in the back of the pickup truck. I don't know if you
Yeah,
noticed.
barricades,
Yeah.
cones, yeah, we keep all that stuff right in the bed of the pickup truck. So like a night like tonight where they have stuff down everywhere, you already have the barricades in the back of the truck. That saves us
Someone
from
asked,
calling out.
somebody asked me, why do we have a pickup truck? I said, why don't you go ask?
Yeah,
I said, go ask.
right.
So, and that's
Well, you
what
have
they
that
were-
stuff in there. My sergeant's on the road. He could pull a barricade out, put it up instantly. It's not something I don't have to call the DPW. Hey, can you send 2 guys out here to put some barricades up? My guys, they have it right in the back of the truck. They could do it pretty quick. There was a whole bunch of purposes for it, but I mean, I can't put any more pickup trucks on patrol, even though it was a nice cost-saving measure this time. You know, it's really not big enough to be transporting prisoners in, so that's why we couldn't put a cage in it, but this one it worked out for, and it saved some money. The other vehicle is an admin vehicle. One of the actual admin vehicle that we're going to be cycling out is the old tax assessor vehicle that they got replaced several years ago. That became our detective vehicle. It's a 2004 Jeep Liberty, which that is definitely on its last legs. That's the detective vehicle that's going to be cycled out. The traffic messaging trailer, we did not include that in this budget. We eliminated that from this one. The live scan
Get
finger.
that last year?
What's that, the traffic messaging trailer? No,
I thought we got
It's
that.
been coming out of the budget every year.
that comes out of the budget every year.
It's been put
No,
in and
who
we
was
have to
telling me
take
a
it out.
story? We had one out
I
here.
thought we had one.
We borrow the counties.
Wow.
We borrow the counties when we don't have one. So we call the county and say, is it available, or are
But
we
I
able to
thought
borrow
we
it?
put the money in the budget last year for that specifically. Gene, you spoke about it.
Yeah.
And you asked to put the money in for this message board. And were we under the assumption it was?
I thought we got one, so.
That's
No.
to make cuts, and that was one of the things we cut.
No, I remember, Gene, that was the last thing she said about the budget, was to put it in.
I think actually there wasn't in, and I said, you keep asking for it. And then it was just like, okay, get it already, because it is, and I can see if you borrow one from the county, but when you have a road closed and people are commuting, you know, it's easier, you know, now you have a pickup
Absolutely.
truck.
We
It's
were
like-
all under the impression you got it already.
No.
Okay.
It would be a very useful tool, but they are pretty expensive, so usually, unfortunately, that's the first thing that gets cut. We have put in for grants to try to apply for them, but, I mean, we've never won those grants to be able to buy it, so.
I wonder if they could apply for a grant.
If what?
The fire marshal, I wonder if he could apply for a grant for that.
Yeah, but the thing is that if you're talking about the grants that he applies for, we have some perhaps greater needs on fire. It's like a couple of years ago, remember when we were talking about the
Stretchers?
stretchers,
Electric.
the automatic, the automatic and
Wind.
stretchers that were about over $100,000 each. If you put in for those, then you're not likely to get some things that are more important or higher priority.
No.
Sometimes they only allow you to put in one, so it depends on what your priorities are. Maybe
Thinking.
one will come up specifically for something of that nature, because I think it's very wise to have something like that, because you can't count on the county. If something's widespread, you get a widespread storm, everybody in the county will be calling them for the same exact thing. We have obviously more need up here because of all the roadways we have, but it's not assured that you're going to get it.
The live scan fingerprint machine, under the new bail reform, all of our prisoners that we arrest, they go to the live scan fingerprint machine, that's how they're processed. That live scan fingerprint machine is directly linked to the judge, so that you're able to compose the score that the arrestee has. The judge can review everything, and through those fingerprints, it also searches the nationwide database, and it'll see if he has any other crimes anywhere else. That live scan fingerprint machine is how we do our arrest process now, as per New Jersey state law. So unfortunately, this is the year that they're updating live scans. Our old one is beyond its serviceable life. It's not something we're able to keep using. They will not come out and service it for us. So that went into this year's capital projects.
Does that have the palm in it, too?
Yes, yes, it does.
And that's, palm's required for sex crimes, is that not correct?
Do you know if the palm is
That's right.
required for the sex?
That was my recollection.
I'm not aware of that.
Okay, sure.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But the palm is definitely included in it.
Yeah.
But that purchase price includes the software to maintain that for the next 5 years and its maintenance. The backup, does anybody have any questions on the live scan? The backup generator in the Conway Tower, the reason we put in for that this year, I don't know if you knew the history from last year. We had the snowstorm last year that the tree came down up in Lake Conway, took the power out, and it was on a Friday, and the power company went up and they looked. They didn't realize that that power line fed to our Conway Tower, which feeds all of radio communications. And then they went to all their other places. It was like a catastrophe. That was the bad snowstorm where it was power out was everywhere. So Saturday night, I got the phone call that our fire channel stopped working. So I came in, I'm starting to check in headquarters to see if I could figure it out. That's when I heard the battery backup tones on the radio for our police band. And I said, ooh, there's no power at the Conway Tower. So we went up to the Conway Tower. That's when I found the tree down. That's when we had called Sussex Rural, but they had already pulled their crews off for the night because they'd been working so many hours. They were not coming out till Sunday morning. When we took the gator, we got all the way up to the tower. We found out that our generator was kaput. So the DPW mechanics came out like 2 o'clock in the morning, and we were up on the mountaintop working. They were able to get that generator re-going after a couple hours, but our dispatch center had ultimately completely gone down, and all communications and everything had been transferred over to the county to temporarily dispatch for us. So we do have a maintenance contract for our generators, and they do come out. The generator that's up there is from the 1990s. It's a really old diesel generator. We had Sussex Rural Electric came out and gave us the quote, and they could replace it with a diesel generator, standalone. And this one would be reporting. It could send you a text message. It's doing a test. It could report to you that it's down. I mean, we didn't know for almost 30 hours that the generator was even running and that there was no power up there. Unfortunately, that's really old technology that's up there from the original GE tower that was there. They donated that. There's probably some equity in that generator, the Allison Chambers diesel motor. It's a huge old diesel motor. There's probably some equity in that. I'm not sure what it is, but that's the reason that we put in for that Conway Tower. We're just another one small crisis away. That generator goes down. We really don't have a backup plan in place. We need to have something sufficient that we could have as a standby. And as part of that project, we would have them simply install, a regular generator plug that I could throw a portable generator on, drive up, and just plug the thing in if it came to it. This way we could have a backup to the backup.
You know also what size the diesel tank is for that?
I don't, but the runtime was like 40 hours, which is, more than what we're getting in the thing now. So.
Yeah, because if we have a bad snow, it doesn't always get taken care of for a truck to get up there and put fuel in it.
Yeah, yes. Well, we did take precautions for that. So now we do, in the PD, we have a diesel card. So if worse comes to worse, I'll fill a couple cans of diesel, I'll put it in the back of our gator, and I'll just make my way up to the mountaintop and fill it up if it comes to it in a real bad storm.
Will you delegate that responsibility this year, Chief, or are you going to take?
I do love the outdoors and going up on the mountaintop in the middle of the night, so I probably will still do that myself.
Maybe you should check to see which officer lives closest.
That's probably still me. The ATV was removed. Animal control garage doors. We included that in this capital project. So the animal control garage doors that are there right now are not insulated. So where all the animals are in the back, there's definitely some additional heat expenses, and we're losing just, a lot of our heat is going right out the door in the wintertime to try to keep the animals warm. I think that would be a very good investment to put some insulated garage doors in. And then also included in there is the cat cages. You could probably speak better than I can on the cat cages. The cat cage was a request because we really need some updated cat cages in there.
Can those items be bought out of the trust or out of that second trust fund that we have?
Are you talking about the donations account? They probably could, but we are currently in the works of doing a project to do the heat over there.
We need a whole new HVAC system
Yes.
for over there.
Okay, so let me ask you another question. So when we look at the budget for animal control and you're taking 87,000 out of the trust,
That's from a different trust fund. That's from
Oh,
the licensing fund. the revenue
right, so is that offsetting a lot of these expenditures?
fund. The trust offsets the expenditures, correct?
So if I add up all the expenditures and then deduct what's due from the trust, I'm going to come out with these same numbers you have here?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. If you could have picked 2 capital items that are most important to the police department, what would you pick? Just asking. I would think the generator would probably be one of them.
I mean, that's near the top, but, I mean, we need cars to function. I need to have cars so we can function. Cars are the most critical thing. Could we limp the generator along? We can. The generator does work right now. We do have a service contract. But again, it could be 2 o'clock in the morning and that thing goes down and I'm trying to get DPW to come help me at a major storm.
So I would think that would be a priority to get that.
Scan is mandated.
What's that?
Live scan is mandated.
Oh, the live scan is mandated. That's definitely one of the top ones also. You know, that's really tough to say. I just got to pick 2.
I should have gave you a heads up on that one.
You should have. My guys need to be able to have cars to go to calls in that, are
What's the
obviously
average
reliable.
life of a car?
Right now, we do 5 years. And 5 years, the last couple of years, in our 5th year, we've had cars. Last year, one of those cars came offline before we even had the other one online.
And how many cars do you have?
We have 10 patrol cars.
So far, I've been here 4 years almost, so all those should be all
Yep.
fine.
Every year, we're on a cycle where
I
we
know, you
replace 2 patrol
replace
cars.
and how many miles do you replace them at then?
They could be anywhere from 110,000 and up, but that's not including idle hours. That's just actual miles on the car. Think of all the idle hours on
Yeah, they
trees down, you got equipment running. I mean, I could only imagine if I was able to see what the amount of idle hours, I don't see that. If I could see it, it's probably pretty astronomical, I would say.
So out of the 10 patrol cars, you need to replace 2 of them?
We replace 2 every year, yes.
10 miles.
And by the time we hit that cycle that we're replacing 2, they're in the 100,000s. Like I said, these 2 are over 110,000. I didn't walk out to see what they're at today, but they're over 110,000.
And you do the detective cars less often.
Detective cars are like every 7, 8 years, somewhere in that ballpark. Like I said, actually, the last detective car we got was the old tax car. That was the '04 Jeep Liberty, which they said they were unable to drive anymore. I mean, we inherited it because we needed to have a car. We just didn't have one, so we've been driving that the last couple of years. But they have been investing money in that to keep that running for us.
So that would be your second priority, cars.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Anybody else?
Good.
Anything else? Do you have any questions?
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, this evening, we have a special proclamation. It's for the St. Patrick's Day Parade, and our grand marshals are here. And I was just, Mayor Shortway, would you like the honor of
Sure.
reading? If all of you could please come forward?
I think they heard you.
Excuse me?
I don't think they heard you.
Oh, I was going to bring it to you. Just,
Oh, I thought you said all of them.
Gentlemen, you want to join me? You care to, please?
was afraid it was going to blow away.
Whereas the County of Sussex is hosting its 16th annual St. Patrick's Day Parade and celebration on Saturday, March 16, 2019 in Newton. And whereas the St. Patrick's Day Parade and celebration in Sussex County is a highly anticipated event enjoyed by many township and county residents alike. And whereas we are fortunate to live in a community where the fusion of many ethnic cultures offers a mosaic of rich traditions and heritage to be shared and celebrated. And whereas this month, in an opportunity to recognize the significant contributions our Irish community makes on the prosperity, vitality, and success of our city, and now therefore be it proclaimed by the mayor and council of the Township of Vernon that they do hereby invite the residents of Vernon to celebrate the annual St. Patrick's Day Parade 2019, presented this 25th day of February 2019, under my hand, Harry J. Shorley, Mayor, and Gene Murphy, President of the Council. Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you. Let's present this.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you, too.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So, thank you. Actually, I'd like to call for a short recess. May I have a motion?
Motion.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
We're in recess for, we have the center, we have a presentation at 7.
They're out there.
They're out there, so I'll go see what they.